Like sand on the shoreline, Michigan's lakes have the power to shape us. Because the ripples we leave behind, all that joy, wonder, and love, will always come back to us. And while we change with the seasons, those feelings never do. They just grow stronger across 2 peninsulas and endless freshwater lakes and rivers. So dive into the waters of pure Michigan and find your season at michigan.org.
I want you to imagine calling your 85-year-old grandmother out of the blue and saying, "Hey, you want to go camping tonight?" Brad Ryan actually made that phone call to his grandmother Joy, and that one impulsive moment turned into a 7-year journey for the two of them. One that took them to 63 national parks, healed some generational wounds, and included a few viral moments along the way. He chronicled all of that in a new book out June 16th called Grandma Joy and Me. And today, Brad Ryan joins me to talk about what he and Grandma Joy discovered along their journey, how they navigate challenges on the road, and of course, where they're going next. That's what we all want to know. That's all after the break. Well, Brad, welcome to Unpacked. It's so nice to meet you.
It's very nice to meet you too. Thank you very much for having me on.
Congratulations on the book. It's coming out June 16th. Is that right?
Yeah, it's Grandma Joy and Me, a journey of healing, one national park at a time. It's been over 10 years in the making, really.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, I want to get to the process of what writing that book was like, but for listeners who may not be familiar with your journey with Grandma Joy, can you tell us how that all started, this phone call that you made to her to take her to see her first mountain?
It was a seed that was planted in my mind when she was 80 years old. And because of my parents' divorce and the divide that happened in my family, which I think a lot of people can relate to when there's a contentious divorce, my father was in my life until I was 20 years old and I was in college. There was a fight that happened that I detail in the book that led to this 10-year estrangement with my grandmother in particular. And when we were reconnecting after I hiked the Appalachian Trail, we were walking around our little state park near our hometown, and we were just discussing some of the things that had happened in those 10 years. And you can't just pick up where you left off after a decade. So I was just trying to give her a sense of how I had changed. And one of the biggest things that I did that transformed my life was to hike the Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine in 2009. And just in that conversation about the mountains, she just kind of casually revealed that she loved, she loves the great outdoors, she loves nature, but had seen so little of it in her lifetime. And she just said, "I never saw a mountain." And that really affected me. Just this idea of a woman that had so much potential and so much love for life, but was limited in her lens on the world. And so I thought, I can do that. I can take her to see one mountain. But I almost immediately got accepted into grad school, an MPH program in veterinary public health at The Ohio State University, then rolled right into vet school. So it wasn't until my 4th year of vet school, nearly 5 years later, when I was at a low point mental health wise, that I called her and asked if she wanted to go on a camping trip with me. And had she said no, we wouldn't be here. But honestly, if we hadn't had so much fun on that first adventure, we probably wouldn't be here either, because it was just intended to be a one and done weekend camping trip. And obviously it evolved into something more grand than that.
Yeah, so this first trip was to the Great Smoky Mountains. It was, as you've said, her first mountain. It was her first camping trip. It was your first real adventure together ever. And you write about it so well in the book. It's just so full of these funny, very relatable moments, like in the middle of the night when the air mattress loses all of its air, her very loud snoring. But, it didn't seem comfortable all of the time. So what was it about this first trip that made you both want to keep going?
I read a lot of self-help books. I listen to a lot of self-help podcasts, but nowhere on that list of things is ever, you should take an 85-year-old on a camping trip. That's going to turn things around for you. That journey of healing is going to look different depending on who the person is, but everybody has an instinct or an intuition about what it is that fills your proverbial cup in life. And I knew that nature was that thing for me, but I had been disconnected from it for so long. I went from the Appalachian Trail, the freedom of that, to being stuck in a study room, sometimes up to 18 hours a day. And then I also knew that I had been missing that connection with my grandmother for even longer than vet school, really. my heart just told me in that moment. Nature and time spent with my grandmother, and also to be able to sort of silence that looming concern that I had that she might pass away and we wouldn't get to see that mountain that she wanted to see, that simple dream that she had. That's why we ended up there, why we kept going. You'll see that in the first chapter because it really reminded me that there was this huge world out there beyond the walls of the teaching hospital that I had been stuck in, and the pressure cooker of that there still was freedom to be found and joy to be had.
Yeah, well, and on that first trip, you also did your first hike together to the top of Alum Cave Bluffs in the Great Smoky Mountains, where Grandma Joy received a standing ovation from her fellow hikers. I think it really sets up what the book is going to be about, but I was wondering if on that first trip, you were doing all of these things that were really new to her, did you see her change?
I think for sure, because once again, she really didn't have the ability to experience even the simple pleasures that a 7-hour road trip offered. Seeing the elk that were in rut, we timed that very well. So that was a spectacle in itself. And then, like I said, it was just, we went there to see a mountain. I didn't think that we were going to climb a mountain. Just, she was so nonchalant about it at the time. She's like, well, what's the worst that can happen? If we're in over our heads, we'll turn around and come back down. It didn't really strike her something to not attempt at age 85. And yet,
that.
Yeah. And
what a cool attitude.
I think a lot of people just talk themselves out of things.
Yes.
And it's not that they can't do it. It's an important talking point to include in the conversation about accessibility and traveling with an older person, because I also feel like, you got to look at it both ways. We need to think about accommodation, but we also need to think about not being overly limiting, because we have a preconceived notion about what 85 looks like or 90 looks like. It may look more adventurous than you think.
Yeah, it's amazing how traveling with somebody with different needs can, change your perception of travel. And not to skip towards the end of the book or our conversation, since we're still going to keep going, but in the epilogue, you take this very personal story and you zoom out to something that feels really urgent right now, the idea that America has a loneliness crisis, especially among older people. And maybe national parks could be part of the answer. So I wanted to ask you about what you witnessed firsthand with Grandma Joy that made you think about aging and isolation so differently. For example, you talked about seeing in Grandma Joy a kind of reverse aging. So what do you think it was about travel that had that impact on her?
I think that mental health informs physical health in so many cases. Yes, there's genetics. There's circumstances that are outside of our control that sometimes keep us from being able to do all the things that we want to do. But the things that are in our direct control, which are to seek connection. And for an older person, that might mean kind of stacking it across the generational divide so that you're not outliving everybody, honestly. That happens to so many people. It sounds so terrible, but people do outlive the majority of their social base. And so that's one of the benefits of intergenerational connection from the older perspective, looking back towards younger generations for that resource of youthful vitality and connection and friendship and love. But also purpose. She had something to look forward to. So it's connection, it was purpose, and also, yes, moving, because the way she navigated a trail at age 85, actually she looked quite unsteady at that time compared to how she got over time, because she was using parts of her brain and parts of her body that she wasn't used to using, right? And making those neural pathways. It actually made her healthier and more balanced and coordinated. And certainly people say it all the time to me that she looks as young, if not younger, now than she did when we began.
That is so inspiring. I love it. Well, when did you know you actually wanted to commit to all 63 parks? And who, did you pitch it? Did she pitch it? Who came up with the idea?
I don't think she even knew how many there were. And honestly, I didn't either. This was just a classic case of, I'd worked my whole life hyper-focused on this goal of becoming a veterinarian. Then suddenly I'm living in rural New Hampshire. I don't know anyone. And I'm driving to work. And after all of this time, I realized, it's a job. It's not the be-all, end-all that I thought it was going to be in life. And I think that's the experience that most of us have with our jobs. Hopefully we love our job, but it was not the entirety of what I needed to be a whole person, to be a well-rounded, happy person, fulfilled person. And so I wanted to take her on another camping trip, because that was my reference point, was just how much fun I had hiking with her, watching her get a standing ovation at the top of that mountain from all these younger people who were just as inspired by what they were witnessing as I was. and this was long before our story went viral, but it brought people out of their trance in a way to see this 85-year-old woman climbing the mountain as they were passing us or coming back down. And so I started looking at Yellowstone as the next national park because I always wanted to go, but then I found that there were all these other parks nearby. And so that's when the dream sort of took root, and I pitched it to her.
And what was her response? Do you remember? Was she like, yes?
Yeah, her response most of the time is, I have nothing better to do. What else am I going to, sounds better than sitting on the couch. So she says, I'll give it a whirl. I'll give it a whirl. That's her philosophy on most things. I've rarely asked if she wanted to do something and she said no. Food, for sure. There's certain things she will not. Oh yeah, she's the pickiest eater.
And that didn't change over the...
No, I try to be adventurous in that way, and she doesn't have that chip in her mind. But yes, experiences, yeah, she'll zip line, she'll whitewater raft, she'll hike and roll down sand dunes, but she won't eat certain things.
Well, hey, to each their own. That's a lot of whirling that she's doing, so maybe food just needs to be a safe place.
And drinking too, like no alcohol for Grandma Joy. We just came back from Ireland, and the whiskey tasting didn't go well.
Oh, did she not taste, or did she taste it and it
she
hit her?
tasted and then played it up like it was the most brutal thing she'd ever endured. Guinness was no better.
Well, will you highlight some of your favorite moments from these parks, or maybe your favorite parks where you learned something new about her or about yourself?
One of the early memories that really touched my heart was when we made our way to Fisher Cap Lake, which is in Glacier National Park, and we were there to see the moose. It was recommended to me by a friend who was from Missoula, Montana, who had worked in the park, and so we went there just to watch the moose. And as I'm watching the moose from the lakeshore and taking photographs, a little girl that doesn't speak English walks over to my grandmother, and they're both wearing very similar polka-dotted fleece outfits. And she had a pair of binoculars in her hand, this little girl did, and she chose to sit down. Of all the people that were there, she chose to sit down next to Grandma Joy and pass her binoculars to her so that she could see the moose. And they were communicating with each other through their eyes and their smile and just by pointing. And the binoculars were going back and forth, and I'm documenting that. And I didn't know at that point that our story was going to go viral the way it did. But, it went viral because really as a culture, that's a rare thing to see. Someone that's traveling with somebody 50 years their senior in these wild places. But from a child's perspective, that is not a non-starter for connection. In fact, most of us are very endeared to older people because there's a perceived softness, a gentility. And a lot of times, I think an experience within a family even is that sometimes the grandparent is a little more open and less strict. And so it's a simple moment. And of course, that scene gets ratcheted up because the moose charges us.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah. But I love those little moments of intergenerational connection that I saw along the way. And there was another beautiful moment that happened in American Samoa that I won't spoil. But, also just the fact that my grandmother was terrified of water, so much so that she didn't want to go out on the still water in the Virgin Islands to see the sea turtles. And then when we were finally able to convince her that she was going to be safe, she didn't want to leave. And then we moved through this pandemic. And then on the other side, she ends up whitewater rafting in Alaska, Class 3 rapids. She didn't know how to swim then either. She just felt like, yeah, I've got a life jacket on. What do I have to lose? So watching her growth in that way and to be able to have these experiences with her that I thought were impossible, it surprised me that she wouldn't even think about it that way. But I saw this evolution through fear.
And it must have been so empowering for her, too, to know that she could face these maybe lifelong fears, right? At 85, if you've never enjoyed water, like, wow.
Yeah, she nearly drowned as a girl, which I didn't know until later. And then, to see that, and then I applied it to my own life because I'm afraid of heights. And we had quite a few white knuckle drives in different parts of the country. The Western Loop of Maui was the worst, but going to the Sun Road, driving up to Mount Washington, she likes to remind me that, we're right on the edge, and all the people down there look like ants.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I don't need to hear that. And then I watched her charge straight ahead on the bridge walk in New River Gorge National Park in West Virginia, and I was terrified, but I followed her. It's amazing that she was able to be that rock for me in that way, but it went both ways. We both pushed each other.
I love that. And it seemed like you also in the book talk about your own evolution, like adapting to her pace a bit, and that you used to be more of a peak bagger. And it seems like throughout this journey, it was really more about connection than anything else. What would you say that you learned?
It's a rare opportunity that I had to sort of walk side by side with a person that didn't take life for granted the way that so many people do when you've got that perceived distance from death. And I think that was at the core of it. And once again, she's not processing it that way, but she is at a point in life at 96 now that she's not assuming that we're going to be back to Ireland or Antarctica or some of these places that we've been, American Samoa, which was our final national park. And so I think that I had to look at that part of myself that took the present for granted, assuming, oh, I can always come back and see this again. So now I try to live in a moment with that perspective in mind that, really take this in case you're not back. And there's a big world to see. Maybe I don't want to choose to come back here. Maybe if I can take all of this in right now, every sensory detail of this, then I don't necessarily need to come back. I can just keep exploring this glorious world that we have. That was a big piece of it. And the other part was just realizing that there is an advantage to it doesn't always have to be burning calories and checking a bunch of stuff off your list. It can be just slowing down and actually hearing the birds that you might be missing if all you can hear is the sound of your beating heart, and noticing the details that are in the environment, like the colors of lichen and certain flowers and the pattern on a bug carapace and whatever it may be. There's a huge advantage to slowing down. I think when you're young, you feel like that's so unsexy to
Totally.
slow down.
Yes.
And I'm grateful that she taught me that, because I can start applying that now. I don't have to have that realization 3 or 4 decades from now if I'm lucky enough to live that long.
Absolutely. Do you think she has always been like that, or is that something that she has learned over her lifetime?
I mean, I have to force her even now to not be in such a hurry. She wears herself out, because she's go, go, go. And so, but yes, relatively speaking, she still had a limit to how fast she could walk these trails and things like that. So I did have to slow down, but she was probably, in her mind, she probably wasn't moving slowly.
Few things are truly timeless, because to last, you can't stand still. That's the beauty of Michigan. You can feel it everywhere. Like a fresh breeze on a riverfront stroll, or how the nightlife hums with electricity. Like an old friend with new stories to tell. So let the excitement bring you back and bring you together, season after season, in pure Michigan. Find your season at michigan.org.
Well, of course, a large part of the book and your journey was this healing component and this reconnection. And I know that there were topics that you didn't talk about for a long time. And I'm just curious how being out of your home base helped you have those conversations. Because I know, like, for example, on a long road trip, it seems so much easier to talk about the big stuff. So what do you think kind of unlocked that piece for both of you?
Yeah, I think anyone who's been on a long road trip can attest to the fact, especially if you've driven through a place like South Dakota, until you get to the Black Hills, there's not a lot to take in. And you can almost, I mean, the way I describe it is almost like a hypnosis, this yellow line coming at you for that hour after hour after hour. And it's the same kind of trance that I felt hiking the Appalachian Trail. You just get into this rhythm, and then your mind wanders back in time. And so often we don't have those conversations. But when she's in the passenger seat and there's nowhere else to go, especially if you're just like, I've got to get this out of my system. I'm going to be sick if I don't ask this question, or if I don't stand up for myself in that way and let her know that, when this thing happened and you stood by on the sidelines and didn't intervene, it really hurt me. And it affected me more than I've ever really wanted to admit to myself and to you. But this is the truth. And that doesn't mean that there aren't uncomfortable conversations, because this road trip had a lot of joy and laughter in it, but it also had anger and tears and frustration and resentment and all of them. I mean, that's life, right?
Yeah. Throughout the book, you talk a lot about reckoning with being gay. And there was a pivotal moment in your life and in the book when you were 10 years old and a teammate punched you in the face at Grandma Joy's house. And the way that your dad responded to that and the way that your grandmother didn't respond basically becomes something that you carried for decades, and then you were able to kind of address and let go of some of that on this trip with Grandma Joy throughout those 7 years. So do you have any advice for people who, might be in a trip like this and maybe facing some similar familial issues?
Yeah, I mean, I've become a softer person because of this journey, and you have to reach a point in life where you understand that your experience, although it's completely valid, is maybe not the same experience that another person had. And they are moving, like for Grandma Joy, for example, let's just use us as the example, it could very well be that she didn't remember this guy punching me in the nose in her backyard because she had 3 sons that got in fistfights all the time. Maybe. So for her to see a boy with a bloody nose didn't strike her as traumatic in the way that it affected me. Because it did. I mean, it changed my life, really, that moment. Not just the punch in the nose, but the way my father chose to handle that moment, which I write about in the book. And I think the important thing is to understand that the other person may not remember things the way you do, and that doesn't make them bad people. It's just the way life is. Like, we all have our own journey, and we don't remember things the same way. We don't process things the same way. I'm a deeply sensitive, emotional person, but I can't have the kind of conversation with Grandma Joy that I would ideally like to have. I have to find someone else who can meet me there. My friend Minga says, if you need olive oil, squeeze an olive. Go find some olives, but don't keep squeezing a rock trying to get olive oil out of it, because it's never going to end well.
That's such a good analogy. And I also think that there's the generational differences, right? Like, I think about my own grandparents and the things that they were taught and the era that they grew up in, and they just had a completely different life experience. They took in different messages. So figuring out that. The silent
generation.
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And there aren't a lot of people around from the silent generation. I'm actually very lucky that I have a 96-year-old grandmother that can pick up the phone when I call. But yes, that comes with a set of deeply ingrained cultural norms. And yes, that's not a generation that was taught to speak openly and honestly about their feelings.
Yes. Yeah. My grandmother was like, don't take it outside the family. That was her motto, like, it's not safe to do. And you internalize that to some extent, but then also, my generation, we do our therapy.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an entirely different world. Like, she grew up with little more than maybe some music on the radio. And I can listen to any therapist I want to on Spotify at the at the snap of a finger. And so the conversations that our generation is having, it's changed so quickly, even in the last decade, I think.
It's almost dizzying how much change has come. And then we have the whole AI conversation. And what does Grandma Joy think of technology in general? What's her kind of approach?
Yeah, I think she marvels at it. Some of it is intimidating to her. I mean, I can't even hand my iPhone to her to take a photograph, or I'll end up with a selfie of her nostril or something. She's very hands-off, but she's been able to experience the joy of a Zoom call with her grandchildren who live in another state, and that type of thing that she never could have imagined. I'm thinking about when we were in Antarctica on the cruise ship, and there was a couple from China sitting next to us, and they did not speak a word of English, but they had this amazing software program on their phone. And,
yes, yeah.
And we were just passing back and forth, having this conversation, and we could laugh together, and it was just like, I thought, this is where we're going. There's so much of technology and AI that scares me. I think most of us, right?
Yes.
But that's an example. If it can foster connection, it's a beautiful thing.
It's such a beautiful thing, and it allows you to do things you would never be able to do otherwise. Like, I had a similar experience in Japan. Well, I would love to talk about how you have now transitioned outside of the United States. What made you to decide to continue the journey? I know you've gone to amazing places. You just got back from Ireland, as you were saying. So what led to that decision, and what is next for you?
Well, reaching 63 U.S. national parks was that was a long haul. That was a very daunting prospect, especially considering how remote some of these parks were. And we achieved it. And like I said, that gave us both a purpose in life. Having something to reach for is so important in life. I think having calendar dates that you circle and really stick to the plan and carry through with that's a big part of, for me, what having a rich life looks like. But then you accomplish the goal, and there's a bit of a sadness there. So part of it was internal, like, yes, I wanted to do something more. And that could have just been, okay, we'll just travel where you want to go. She has a lot of, or I guess we do, have quite a few Instagram followers, and a lot of them were speaking up saying, where's Grandma Joy going next? You have to take Grandma Joy somewhere else. Like, we love watching her adventures too much for this to be finished. So they were grieving in a way as well.
Yes.
And so I thought, okay, well, I think 7 continents, that's a big goal that a lot of us have. And she got a passport at 91, her first passport at age 91, because American Samoa has their own, it's a U.S. territory, but they have their own immigration system. So we had that. So we flew across the international date line from American Samoa to Western Samoa. That was our first country that we visited. And that's Oceania, right? Which some would argue is not one of the continents. So it was just a fun idea. Like 7, it seems like a more doable number than 63. And
Sure.
we've made amazing progress. We've been to 11 countries, 5 continents so far.
Was there one that she really wanted to see?
Yeah, Ireland was the big one. She's a Gordon by blood and a Ryan by marriage, but the Ryan family line originated out of the Tipperary region of Ireland, and we were able to go there. And she climbed up to the Rock of Cashel, and we got to stare out over the landscape, which was so breathtaking and scenic and just stunning. It made me want to take her to Scotland and some of the other homelands that our family originated from. But that was the big one. And I dragged the poor woman to Antarctica first. She was like, I just want to go to a pub and watch other people.
Yeah.
It's vague. She doesn't drink, but she wanted to go to a pub, and she wanted to see the castles and the sheep and all these things. So we did.
And you actually crossed the Drake Passage together?
Yeah, we were on a boat for 2 days from Ushuaia at the southern tip of Argentina.
How did she handle that with her fear of water?
I know. I don't think she even thought of it that way because the boat was so big.
Yes, yeah.
But they told us that we got about 5% of the chaos that one could experience on that passage.
Yes.
Across the Drake. Once again, I don't know what's in the universe, but the fates are very much on Grandma Joy's side because we didn't have too many problems and she doesn't get seasick anyway, but I worry more about just her falling or something.
Absolutely. I know when we went, they were like, you were so lucky you got the Drake Lake and not the Drake Shake.
Yes,
so you watch those videos on YouTube of the huge swells. And
I can't even imagine.
What was that like for her to get down there then and to suddenly like see icebergs and penguins?
Yeah, there aren't good records of those things, but they're pretty sure she may be the oldest person that ever stepped foot on the mainland of Antarctica because it was kind of a roll of the dice to even go there because we were so far from any type of medical help if we needed it. It was really special. I mean, I just remember sitting with her on our balcony and just watching this landscape just unfold in front of us. You think after you've been to Alaska that you've seen like the most epic, untouched part of the world, but really Antarctica is a different rhythm completely. Yep. We're so grateful that we got to go. I mean, we woke up on the first morning and there were penguins swimming at in the water just beneath our balcony.
Oh my God.
So we're like, we knew we were definitely not in Ohio anymore.
Amazing. What is next up for you? Do you know?
Well, we're hoping to go somewhere in Asia later this year. We have a potential sponsor for that trip, which I can't talk about right now, but that will be continent 6. If we make it all the way there, then we're going to go to Australia and knock it out. And
nice.
Those
Right.
are 2,
You're there.
Yeah. I mean, she's 96 and she'll probably live to be 106, but at the same time, like, I don't believe in Russian roulette. I like to just strike while the iron's hot, but then it's going to open up the same deluge of emails from her ardent fans about, like, take her to the moon, take her to Mars.
Oh, the moon. I didn't even think about that. Wow. Would you even entertain that notion?
I don't think so. It would be hard to turn it down if Jeff Bezos said, like, yeah, you can go. I don't know.
Well, how would you describe your travel style, like as travel buddies, not just like grandmother, grandson, but 2 friends out in the world?
She makes sure that we're stocked with snacks. She's the navigator. I'm the driver. And honestly, we've been to so many places where we didn't have good Wi-Fi or a connection to be able to pull up GPS on my phone. And so that old school atlas actually has, I would say, never try to do the national parks without a hard copy of an atlas. Yeah, I think we have found our roles in this duo. Like, she'll put the tent together. I unload all the heavy stuff to put into the tent. Like we would just sort of divide and conquer. She was never one to sit back. She can't stand to not have her hands on something being a part of something constructive. And I don't want to tell her, oh, just sit down, you're too old. That's actually the most offensive thing that you could ever say to her.
For someone who wants to try this and hasn't, what would you recommend?
Everybody has a dream that is unrealized or evolving. And I think that when you put limits on yourself, especially because of age, something that, we're all on that same conveyor belt of time. Our knees are all getting more achy. We're all getting a little more winded when we climb stairs. So I just say, you adapt, but you don't say no. To the best of your ability, try not to say no, because when you do accomplish that first thing that you told yourself you weren't so sure that you could do, then you start to have the light bulbs go off that, oh, no, life is still happening. I'm still in it. And I don't want to spend what precious time I have left just sitting in the couch thinking that all the best days are behind me. And whatever it is that you want to do, I think, maybe start small, but you can also go big too.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I would love to close with what you learned writing this book. So you're going back and you're reliving all of these memories and you're reviewing your relationship and how it progressed. Like, what did you take away from that process?
There were a lot of things that I wrote about because, we're moving forward in time through the national parks, but we're also going back in time through conversation and filling in the gaps of my childhood, her childhood. And, I was able to learn that there's so much of what makes me me that was not conscious. I think that it was how I was raised. I think that there's just certain inherent traits that I was born with in my DNA that Grandma Joyce certainly shares with me, that I found out that her mother shares with both of us. If I had the ability to go back in time even further, I would probably see that thread extending even further back in my bloodline. And it's a real gift to be able to lift up that rock and see what's underneath when the silt clears. And sometimes, what you learn in that inquiry is terrifying and really heartbreaking. And sometimes it's a real source of pride and joy. But no matter what, if you can gather as much information about where you come from while you have those people in your life that you can get that information from, I think it helps you become grounded in who you are and hopefully be a little more proud of who you are. I mean, my father, who was my Grandma Joy's oldest son, we had a very, heartbreaking story. It ends beautifully for Grandma Joy and me, not so much for me and my father. And there was a period in my life where I was so mad at him that I wanted to divorce myself of the Ryan surname altogether. And through the process of writing this book and really coming to a place of grace for my grandmother, for my father, and even for myself, when I could clear that anger and that grievance, when I could push that to the side and just be me and realize that I have a claim on that name too, it allowed me to feel a sense of pride that I didn't have before about, my imperfect family, basically. I think that's what I learned, is that I spent my whole life just feeling the pain that was very real in my heart, but not widening that lens to understand that even my father was a human being that perhaps had his own reasons for not being the father I needed him to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think in the end, what I've written is a love story to an imperfect family, which most families are. And I hope that people read it with that in mind, that it's not just our story, it's a human story about the things that connect all of us, which are getting older one day at a time, and just trying to get through life as unscathed as we can, given the fact that there's so many circumstances that we have to navigate that are outside of our control, but we can heal.
And travel as a vehicle for that, both travel literally and travel as we go through life, right? Our lifetime travels.
I'm glad you said that too, because, and I make this point in the epilogue, but this book is also about not just healing yourself and healing your family. It's also about a call to action for societal level healing. And I think that is such an unappreciated or underappreciated aspect of the national parks. We think about how beautiful Yosemite and Yellowstone and Zion and Glacier are, but we don't think about the joy, the abundance of joy and connection that can come from just camping next to a stranger who you may completely have nothing in common with outside of the fact that you're in this beautiful place in this moment in time, and that you can just sit around the campfire, talk about what a beautiful day you had, and just spend an evening acknowledging each other's humanity for a minute and being able to, just lay down your arms for a second and not be so hyper focused on the typical dividing lines. I think we all need that on a social level. Like, we all need to be able to find our way back to each other and see the good in each other. And our national parks are one of the very last places in America where we can still walk on common ground together and do that. We all have a stake in that.
All right. Well, a big thank you to Brad and Joy for sharing their story. If you're interested in hearing from the two of them, Brad and Grandma Joy are traveling around the U.S. on a book tour this summer. Currently, stops include Colorado, Montana, Wyoming, Washington, Oregon, and California. You can find all the details in the show notes, and there's also a link to the book and their social media handles. We'll see you next week. If you're ready for more travel inspiration and intel like this, visit afar.com and be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. We are at Afar Media. If you enjoyed today's exploration, I hope you'll come back for more great stories and interviews. Subscribing always makes that easy, and be sure to rate and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. It helps other travelers find it. This has been Unpacked, a production of Afar Media. The podcast is produced by Aislyn Greene and Nikki Galteland. This podcast is part of the Airwave Media Podcast Network. Visit airwavemedia.com to listen and subscribe to their other fine shows like Culture Kids and the Explorers Podcast.
Every Sunday, we cover the latest tech news on This Week in Tech. Hi, this is Leo Laporte inviting you to join me. And this week's panel, Gary Rivlin, Pulitzer Prize-winning author of AI Valley, Molly White, Wikipedia editor, and the creator of Web3 is going just great, and car guy Sam Abul-Samad. Sam has some opinions on the brand new Ferrari Luce. Molly's mom has some opinions on Google's new search page, and Gary has some thoughts about the Pope. That and more this week on Twit. You'll find it at twit.tv and wherever you get your podcasts.